Squale. Hello, everyone. Good day. Aquanasilam Nala, Atanaquel. Etape Chantal Morve. My name is Chantal Morve, and I will now give you a visual description of myself. I am a white woman, very, very pale today, wearing glasses, red lipstick, a very long bang on one side. It's curly. I'm wearing Stormtrooper headphones with a microphone, and I have a fake background of mountains, snowy mountains in the night with city lights twinkling in the valleys. Hello, everyone. I will now call the meeting to order. With great respect and humility, we acknowledge and honor the lands of the Snuneymuxw people. The Snuneymuxw people maintain their profound, unique, and spiritual connection to the land through ages, traditions, teachings, stewardship, and expressions of reciprocity. I want to acknowledge that we are all calling in from different areas of our wonderful, this wonderful, beautiful land that we are on. That could be from Sinawas or Estuminas as well. And I'm thankful that you are all here tonight. It's going to be a very, very cool night, a very cool evening. Very excited about it. So I will get to item number 2. Are there any additions, deletions, or changes to the agenda? Please put it in the chat. If you have any comments as well, you could put them in the chat and I will read them aloud. Okay, seeing none, can I get a motion to approve the agenda? Okay, Greg, seconded by Leanna. Anybody opposed? Please write it in the chat or come on screen. Okay, seeing none. I would like to go to number 6, which is the approval of the minutes from the last meeting. So a motion to approve the minutes from the Education Committee meeting held on April 3rd, 2024 be approved. Can I get a thank you, Leanna, seconded by Leanna. Are there anybody opposed? Is there anybody opposed? I'm giving it 1 minute because sometimes it takes a little while for technology to catch up with how quick us humans can be sometimes. Okay, seeing none, that motion is approved. We are now going to go to number 7, presentations, but I believe we're going to be doing this through staff reports, which is number 8. And that is Don Balcombe, Assistant Superintendent, Student Voice Circle, which I'm very excited to hear.
Awesome. Thank you through the chair. I'm very excited to be here to talk about Student Voice Circle. I have with me today several students who participated in Student Voice over this year and have planned this presentation completely with very little guidance from me. They've put everything together for you and I'm excited for this. We have student from Nanaimo District Secondary School, Cassidy White. We have 2 students from Dover Bay, Muskin Sharma and Daniel Sung. We have 1 student from Wellington, Clay Johnson, who I'm not sure if he's signed in yet. We have 3 John Barsby students, Esme McConnell, Owen Stanley, and Brooke Pate. And we have 2 students from Ladysmith, Maisie Carlos and Lauren Mendez. They will be doing the presentation today. We also have had students participate from Learning Alternatives, from Cedar Community Secondary School, and from Island Connect Ed throughout the year, but they were not able to join us for the presentation piece, so you won't be hearing specifically about activities happening at that site. The Student Voice Circle has been in place for several years, and I've had the great honor and privilege of being able to join the circle with students and staff and others around the district. This year, back in the fall, the trustees talked about formalizing the connection between the Board of Trustees and Student Voice Circle. And so one of the nice things that's come out of that process is Admin Procedure 316, which is amended to your package, which just formalizes the process. And our students today are going to talk about the student voice process that has resulted in this student voice circle presentation, the composition of the student voice circle, some highlights at both the district level this year as well as at each of the schools that are presenting out today, and then some forward thoughts for where they would like student voice to go next. So each student in this group is prepared to speak, and they're going to turn their cameras on as they present and speak, and they're going to queue themselves up. I'm going to be advancing the slides, so I'm going to try to queue up with the notes that they've written in the slides. Chantel, if you just give me a thumbs up that you can see that I'm sharing my screen, okay, we're good to go. So I'm going to turn it over to our first speaker, which our speakers are Daniel and Muskin from Dover Bay.
Awesome. Sweet. I hope you guys can hear me fine. Thank you, Dawn, for that wonderful introduction. And on behalf of Student Voice, we want to thank all of the Board of Education members for giving us their time today, as well as the Student Voice committee staff who laid out the framework for this awesome initiative. Next slide. Oh, I think we went to... Awesome, sweet. So the goals of this presentation today will first be an overview of what Student Voice is, as well as what we're about, what we feel like is going well with the schools, what we feel like we need to focus on at a district and school level, and what our thoughts are going forward.
And Daniel, we might need you to continue if Clay is not here, and if that's okay, I'm willing to do the slides for Clay.
We got a text from Clay in the group chat saying it seems like his computer's glitching a bit. Is he joined right now?
I don't think he's in the meeting.
I see.
So I'm happy to do the slides unless you want to, Daniel. I'll do the slides that Clay had queued up, and if he can join us, that's great. And if not, we'll carry on.
Sounds good. We'll try to figure out what's happening with Clay on my side.
Awesome, thank you, Daniel. So the purpose of the Student Voice is to enhance leadership and communication skills. It's to recognize the responsibilities and inclusive decision making. It's to provide a forum for discussion within and between schools, and it's to emphasize the value of student perspectives and facilitate their input, as well as encourage democratic decision making. And our students have really held true to the purpose, and those of you on staff who've been able to, or trustees who've been able to join the circle, have been wowed by the depth of the thought and insights that students bring to these topics. Oops. So here's kind of how the Student Voice circle has worked. The superintendent or designate, and in this case, I've been very fortunate to be the designate for this group, leads Student Voice Circle, including the organizing and facilitating of the meetings. Next year, students will be chairing whenever possible to provide an opportunity for them to develop their facilitation skills, and schools will take turns chairing meetings, so we'll have a rotating chair for each of the meetings. Having a small group will allow a conversation between all voices and give rise to more actionable plans. And with more meetings of bite-sized topics, it will allow the students to zero in on maybe even solve some of the more pressing issues more effectively. And it gives more students a chance to be involved. So there are several schools will have more than 2 representatives, but they'll only have 2 at any given meeting. The committee meetings that took place this year that got things going, you can see October 5th was the first committee meeting. So that was at the request of the board that we bring together a group of students and staff for the purpose of developing a student voice circle process. On October 27th, we met specifically around the topic of the environmental stewardship and sustainability, and students are going to report out later on that, on the outcomes of that meeting. November 6th and November 30th were the committee work to address the format and structure of the Student Voice Circle and drafting up the admin procedure. And February 27th, we went through the BC Adolescent Health Survey results from the McCreary Institute, and the McCreary report, and that was a super well and active conversation. And now I'm going to turn it over to Esme, Owen, and Brooke from John Barsby, who are going to share the activities that happened during the October 27th meeting.
On October 27th, we had a meeting focused around sustainability. We first talked about what was going well in our schools, which included strong connections to Indigenous land teachings. Our schools are doing well with integrating Indigenous teachings into our curriculum. Community gardens, almost every school has a community garden or has one in progress, and all schools have a composting program in effect.
Lauren, are we moving on to the next one? We're talking about things to improve around sustainability. We're moving on to the next slide.
Yes.
Okay.
So now we're going to highlight what's going on at the school level. So things that are going well are commitment to student wellness and addiction support. And we just also want to highlight that confidentiality is not only an agreement not to share with patients, peers, but that also excludes the parents, as well as some other examples are addiction support, mental and physical health. Some other things that are going well are the new gender neutral bathrooms that are being spread throughout several schools. And some things that we think we need to improve on are, so we're sort of tying this in, is the safety concerns in washrooms, because like just the rates of vaping and misuses of it isn't the best. Also, the promotion of addictions and health resources. Right now, it's super hard to access all of these resources, and even if they're by appointment, they're usually not there, and the appointment time takes a really long time. Some other things that we need to improve are the ongoing phone policy discussion, as it's very controversial right now.
So now we're going to kind of shift from the district level and we're going to move forward and talk a little bit more about student voice at a school level and the individual schools. So I'm from NDSS, my name's Cassidy, and some things that are going well for us at NDSS is our anonymous in-school student feedback, which we've developed in a form of chat boxes. So they've been super great because students feel more safe sharing feedback when they're not when they're completely anonymous and they don't have to share their name. Another thing that we think is going super well is our student-led project opportunities. Taking an example from a couple years ago where we had our Rainbow Crosswalk, we've had murals put up, we've had super great food initiatives put forward. There's a lot of student-led opportunities at NDSS that we're really proud of. And then a last thing that we think is going super well for us is resource awareness, which is something that we had made a really big focus this year, as it came to light that a lot of students at NDSS weren't actually aware of the resources that they had available. And we think that it's super important for them to understand that there are people in their corner that they can reach out to if they always need help. Some things that we do know that we need to improve on is our outreach with other schools. So talking to them about what they're doing for student voice and thinking about ways that we can apply the things that they're doing to our own school. We've talked about diversifying the types of student support. So for example, having a specific counselor for academic support and a specific counselor for mental health, or a specific person that they can go to if they need food or if they need additional help at home. And then the last thing that we think is really important for us to improve on as a really large school in the district is our school spirit and our ability to keep students totally engaged at school, which is hard because of our rates of in attendance is really, really high right now.
So some things that are going well in Ladysmith Secondary, the first two sort of tie into each other, are our gender neutral bathrooms with the vape detectors in them. Those are just super great. They look great. You can use them, you know, you can be in and out. They're very open, so you feel safe in it. And as well as we have a new garden in progress, which is exciting to hear. And we have an amazing breakfast program. It's always there every day, all throughout the week, just something you can rely on. So we're super proud of that. And some things we think we need to improve on are our sustainable practices. Instead of just letting students know what our expectations are around that, and just educating them, as well as our awareness of events and showcasing achievements. So not always just looking like on the downside of things and things that we need to improve on, but also like letting others know what we're doing that's good and things that we've achieved and are proud of. So.
Thank you, Lauren. Clay, if he's sorted out his technical issues, will be joining us. If not, I know Tegan from Wellington was also helping put together these slides and speaking to these items when we talked about things going well in areas that Wellington wanted to zero in and focus on. So I will share unless I see Clay pop on the screen anytime soon. So Wellington's really proud that their LGBTQ inclusivity is alive and well, and they're really proud of that as their school community. Their community garden has been going really well. They've been very proud of the student involvement in events with their feeder school students in the transition to secondary school. And things that they want to improve on is they want to kind of revamp their existing leadership circle that they have at Wellington. They want to look at waste sorting. So that's one of the networking things where some other schools have shared some practices that the Wellington Student Leadership Group wants to focus on. And they want to address the issue of students being able to get to class on time and get the school day started in a good way. So those are some things from Wellington.
Hi. So at Dover Bay, some of the things that are going well is we recently did student advocacy presentations, and these were basically about all of kind of our issues that we're having at Dover, and we got a lot of good feedback with this because senior students took this presentation on, and we talked to the grades about the collective impact that everyone had on our school community. And so after talking with administration after to see the difference with everything, we saw the biggest change was our waste sorting and the hygiene in our bathrooms and the garbage in our school was a lot better, especially because we kind of told our students that the custodians pick up after us, they clean our school, and it was really helpful putting a face to the job. And so students were more aware that these people clean up after us and they take care of our school. And talking to the custodians, it was really nice because they said students have come up to them and introduced themselves and asked if they ever needed any help or anything to that. Other things that have been going well at Dover is our breakfast program. Our administration says that we feed about 50 kids a day, and we feel that that's a success in our community. Some things we do want to improve is our vaping continuously. Our numbers have been better, but vape detectors have not been the solution at Dover. We've seen numbers vary. However, we did bring in Quit, I'm pretty sure they were called Quit Vaping, group from the Lung Association, and many teachers and students, I believe, felt like that was helpful because of the resources. They had a resource where you could scan a QR code, and then students would get reminders of don't vape and try something else, or like go for a walk, or just different things to try and get them to step away from vaping. So good and bad sides to the vaping, but we still do have a few issues such as the congestion in our hallways, and again, giving students more time to be connected to our school and like have school spirit and be engaged in class.
Okay, at Barsby, some things that are going well are our breakfast program. We also have a breakfast program available to students every morning. And we also have a good amount of school spirit here at Barsby when it comes to events like our gym riots. We had everyone either actively participating or cheering for their teams, which was great to see and really emphasized how important it is to come together as a community and have fun. Some things to improve on at Barsby are having more students get involved in clubs like Student Advisory and Eco Club. We have a lot of clubs, but not very many students joining. Like most schools, our vaping in the washrooms and change rooms is a big problem. So improving on that would be a goal. And spreading awareness of events is something we need to work on, because we do have a lot of great events at Barsby, but not everyone knows about them right away. So, yeah.
And because we are such wise students, an idea that we've really tried to focus on this year is the idea of WISE, which is wellness, inclusivity, safety, and environment. This includes topics that we've already talked about previously in the presentation, such as vaping education for younger students, collecting student opinions in an anonymous way, safety and wellness within schools, as well as waste management and eco clubs. Some other things that may not fall into one specific category, but we still feel that fits within the WISE idea, is having a food mob or having a really good breakfast programs within schools, including more counselors in more specialized areas, as well as having more student support during school hours and during lunchtime, which would allow students to have more accessible aid and support, as opposed to having to reach farther than they should have to.
After our success this year, we took some time to consider what we'd like the Student Voice Circle to look like in the future. Here are some of our thoughts. We should establish clear themes, promote the circle, and establish a schedule. So going forward, our main goals are a set schedule for the Student Voice Circle meetings that will allow the administrators to find and coordinate with their students. Frequency. Having increased frequency to 4 meetings a year will allow us to tackle specific issues and address all of the categories outlined in the previous slide. In school, our primary purpose is to seek out student voice opinions, but also make sure that plans get acted upon. These people will also be a reference for the next groups of circle-bound students to ask questions to, as well as representation. How can we make sure to get a good sample of student voices and include underrepresented students? We really want to make sure that everyone's voices get heard.
All right, thank you everyone so much. There are time for questions, so I'm going to stop sharing my screen and ask that our student presenters put your cameras back on. So if there are trustees that have questions or comments, we'll be able to let you answer them.
Thank you so much. I will tell you my thoughts after. I'm going to let other folks here get started. Greg Keller says, great presentation. Thank you, students. He's coming off a really bad cold, so I'm not quite sure if he's going to be able to come on and actually speak without coughing too much. And Tanya would like to ask a question.
First of all, I want to say what a wonderful presentation. I greatly enjoyed it, and I applaud you for your speaking skills. My question for you is around, you talked about getting more input from students, and you talked about how you have the anonymous boxes in some schools. I guess what I'm wondering is, have you noticed, or is there a way of finding out, do you think you're getting input and feedback from the full range of grades? Like, are there challenges, do you think, getting feedback from the younger grades, particularly grade 8s in particular?
Go ahead, Cassidy.
Yeah, so they're set up at NDSS, and I personally, because we're the group that goes through them and we kind of weed out the ones that are more just comments as opposed to actual suggestions or questions. They've been placed in the school in the way where they're really accessible. So we have one in the Indigenous education room, there's one in the library, and there's one in the counselor's office. Okay. So we saw a really large influx of grade 8s that had gone in with their teachers to put in comments, so that they could all kind of have a time to understand what was going on. I do think we get a lot more younger kids that put in feedback than we do older kids, but I think that's not necessarily due to them not wanting to, but I feel like a lot of older kids are just not at school the same amount of time due to spares or due to having like a break, or they just don't feel like their opinion is going to be as potentially influential as a younger kid is.
Okay, well, thank you. See, I would have thought it would be the opposite, that the younger kids might not have the courage to speak up. So that's good to know. Thank you.
Thank you,
All right,
Ken.
I
Any
will
follow-up
turn
question?
off my screen now and let someone else speak.
No follow-up question then. All right. Leanna.
Hi, you guys all did so good. Oh my goodness, I was listening fully and not looking over at my dinner that's sitting next to me at all. So I was wondering about the panic room, if there is one, and what an example of that would be, because that seems really amazing to me, just knowing a lot about anxiety and needing safe, calm, quiet spaces. So I've seen a lot of quiet spaces in elementary schools, but I just haven't seen one in a high school.
Yeah, go ahead, Austin, please.
Hi. So at Dover, we don't have a panic room, but we do have newly built project rooms, and often they're used for work and projects and whatnot, but a lot of it is open. And so we talked about this in our meeting of how students usually go to the bathrooms if they need a break, even if they're not trying to skip class and they honestly just need a break from their life and school and just the stress of everything. I think like those spaces in Dover are really good for that. It's just not very well known. And I've been trying to get that more well known in Dover because they are good spaces for students to just go sit down, even though they are fully glass. Like it's not too much of privacy, but at least it's a quiet space for someone to calm down if they need it.
Okay, thank you. That's awesome. And I just have one more question, if that's okay. Is there anyone else waiting, Chantal? So it was Wellington that mentioned about how the LGBTQ is going really well, and I'm just fascinated by that. And it's so great that you guys are meeting to be able to discuss these things with each other. And I think meeting 4 times a year is amazing. Like 2 times a year is great, but 4 would be so much better. So what is like specifically going so well there, and how do we replicate that?
Leanna, we don't have a representative from Wellington here. Clay and Tegan, who are putting those slides together, can't speak to that. But I do know that, yeah, so sorry, can't give you a specific answer, but I do know that all of our secondary schools do have LGBTQ supporting clubs. I think, and Cassidy had talked about the value of Student Voice Circle networking. And so that would be one of the things that I think those students would want to know is more from Clay and Tegan, is what's working at Wellington that they can bring to their school as well. So sorry, they're not here to speak to that, so I can't help.
Thank you. You guys are so great. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Naomi Bailey says, thanks so much for your presentation. I appreciated the information and thoughtful insights. You can read this, Naomi. You can do this if you would like.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, like, thank you so much for the presentation, and I really did appreciate the information and thoughtful insights about what's going well in your schools and what you still need to work on. It's always been my experience that the students know. They know what's working and what isn't. And I just say I raise my hands to you for having the courage and making the time in your very busy lives to make your schools and the district community a better place. We appreciate all your efforts and contributions. So, Hachka.
Chris Perry Evely says, thank you so much for coming and speaking. We all know how difficult it can be. You all did wonderful. Keep up the great work. Our schools are a better place because of students like you. Tom Rokeby, a bunch of trustees went to a fantastic drag show at Wellington last year. Yes, we did. It was fantastic. I got to go. I didn't get to go for the whole thing, but for part of it, it was absolutely fantastic. It was such a great, comfortable space to be in and enjoy the beauty of the art, the artistry that comes with it. And I really appreciated being able to go to that. Send us more invitations to those kinds of things, okay? We like to go to those things, okay? Don't have anybody on the list, so I will take a moment to thank you all as well. The questions I had actually were asked by the other trustees. They stole my questions. But I'm so happy that we get to hear directly from you. You are why we are all here. This is the work, and we really appreciate you having the bravery, the courage, whatever it took to get you here to this place. I appreciate you all for doing that, for stepping up, for talking about representation, to making sure that there was that in there as well. I actually have heard from staff quite a few times that they're like, nope, they really make sure that there's representation there, and that if that person's not there, that they're speaking, kind of helping bring that voice, that lens to the table as well. And I really appreciate it. All the kids will do much better because your voices and those that come and help inform us because of this. Leanna says, because of the drag show, she said, that's amazing. I missed it and forgot about this. A great example of fantastic LGBTQ2S+ celebration. It's actually, is it LGBTQ2S? I'm sorry. I have to get the new, not new, it's not new. I have to get it right. And I'm going to work on that one. Thank you very much for all of this. I actually have questions in my head kind of swirling around, but I think what you've done here, this presentation has given us a really good overview and highlight of what you've been talking about and the future of things that you'd like to talk about. I actually do have a question about the steps forward. What's going to happen next? Is it are you going to go and recruit new people yourselves, or is it going to be more of a staff thing? How is that going to work? I know that there was talked about a little bit having a little bit of training, kind of people coming on board, sort of thing. Could you kind of explain a little bit further how that's going to work? Be done.
Yeah, I can share a little bit of that. So the Student Voice Circle structure, because they wanted to keep the Student Voice Circle events reasonably small. So we talked about 2 students from each of the schools attending each meeting, with the idea knowing that many schools will want to have more students than just 2 throughout the entire year. So if we talk about 4 formalized meetings a year, that could be 2 students from one school. So Esme may attend from John Barsby all 4 sessions, or there could be 2 students attend each of those 4. So there may be 8 students from Barsby that attend Student Voice Circle for that year. And we also know that we may have some ad hoc meetings where we pull together a group of students beyond this Student Voice Circle. So we might do one simply on networking around zero waste and sharing out ideas on that. And that would be bring a bunch of students together specifically who are from the eco clubs who'd say, this is my passion, this is what I want to do. So yeah, and the messaging will go out through our principals and vice principals, and they will connect with the school level student voice groups and say, hey, who wants to participate in which of these activities? And we'll pick some topics as well through this group, so that it's structured and scheduled.
Fantastic. I also love the whys. That was a really great kind of connection piece through it all. That was really cool. Thank you. I really appreciate this, and I'm looking forward to more reports and updates as we go forward with this. I do have a question, and I think it's about the procedure. And I don't know, like, are we going to be discussing the procedure after, or are we going to discuss that now, Don? I'm not quite sure what your flow is here, so.
The purpose for today was just to have the students do the presentation. If I think if trustees have questions or want to speak about the procedures, we'll do that separate of this presentation time, and this will be our first foray into this formalized admin procedure, and we will obviously monitor it and tweak and revise as necessary as we go forward.
Great. Okay. Well, thank you very, very much. Aitsapka to all of you. Keep doing what you're doing, because you're all incredibly important. Everybody, all of our staff, all of our students are incredibly important. Just this work is really, really impactful. Thank you very much for taking this time to do this for us today as well.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you, students. Well done.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, I'm not sure how we can top that one off. That's fantastic. Yeah, so great. We are going to be moving on now to 8.2. Yeah, I actually do have a question about the AP for the Student Voice Circle, but I'm not quite sure where to ask this question. I'm sorry. Don, would you like to
I'm
bring that
fine
up?
if you want to ask it now.
Okay.
Chantal, I just thought for the student portion of the presentation, it wasn't necessary for them to stick around for the procedure piece. So if you now is probably appropriate.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Don. So about the AP 316 Student Voice Circle, I just wanted to highlight something in here that I wasn't sure where it was. Maybe I just missed it when I was reading it. But there isn't anything about trustees where the procedure is in. Like it will comprise of minimum of 2 representatives, and it talks about the superintendent or designate will lead the Student Voice Circle. Are we just kind of adding that with the policy itself, or are we going to add that in here? Because I think us trustees too need to know what the procedure is, so we understand kind of how we're gonna go about doing it, how we're gonna get involved. So
yeah, and I remember that being part of the conversation, whether we would formalize like the number of trustees or whether we would leave that to invitations so that multiple trustees could rotate through. And it looks like we didn't formalize that in the admin procedure. So that might be something we either need to put into the admin procedure or leave it at the board level to decide. But the students, I know the students they welcome trustees at that space for sure.
Thank you. Yes, Mark.
Yeah, and just to remind everyone that so policy 2.56.2 is specifically allow for the chair and up to 2 additional trustees to be present during meetings which shall occur not less than twice per school year. So obviously they've expanded that the number of times, but the policy will require that presence.
Okay. Okay, great. Cool. Wasn't sure procedurally if we should add it in there or not, or all that fun stuff. Thank you very much for Mark for clarifying it, and Don as well. I appreciate that a lot. And if anyone else has any questions in regards to this, I will look in the chat. Okay, I don't see any questions, and we will now move on to 8.2. That would be, well, Laura. Hi, Laura. Thank you.
We faked you out there a little bit. I'm just going to introduce the next staff report. So I'll pass it over to the committee. So thank you, Chair. So it's my pleasure to introduce the next staff report on the district's accessibility plan. But I'll just provide you a little bit of context before I turn it over to our next speakers. So the Accessibility BC Act came into effect in June 2021, and in September 2022, the regulation under the Act was released. And the regulation identified the public sector organizations and those public sector organizations that must comply with the Act. And so the new Act represents a really significant milestone in advancing accessibility and inclusion for people with disabilities in the province. It's It's a big deal. So essentially the Accessible BC Act represents a commitment to creating a more inclusive and accessible society where people with disabilities can fully participate in all aspects of life. So that's our bit of an overarching, bit of a vision statement, if you will. So the Act, proactively the Act promotes awareness and understanding and emphasizes consultation and collaboration. It also establishes a legal framework, standards, and enforcement mechanisms to drive positive change and remove barriers to accessibility all across the province. So with that, I would like to introduce members or representatives of the Accessibility Committee, and I'm going to turn it over to Director of Instruction, Carrie Steele.
Yeah, good evening, everybody. So through the chair, Sean Johnson, our executive director in HR, and I co-chair that committee. And we do have a couple of other committee members with us as well. So what we thought we might do this evening is we have a short PowerPoint presentation that I'll lead us through. It's just a few slides, but it's an update of the work that the Accessibility Committee has been up to this year. And then we're, of course, all available for questions and discussion after if there's follow-up that folks would have. So with that, unless Sean, there's anything you want to say before I launch in, otherwise I'll share the screen and we'll get things rolling here. So we do have an accessibility plan that was new to us this fall. As Superintendent Tate shared with us, we were required to have a committee this past year. We actually started it about 6 months early. We anticipated it was coming, and this is work that we're really committed to as a system. So we wanted to kind of hit the ground running. So we had a committee meeting beginning in January last year, and our plan was up and running for September 1st. That included an update to the school district website and a feedback mechanism that was kind of put into place in the fall, and we've done some work with since, so I'll share some more about that. But just, you know, this was something that is a requirement, but didn't come with specific funding when the province announced it, so we really had to put our heads together. So we do have 4 departments that are involved with it. So we have parents, we have administrators, leadership from 4 departments, lots of people involved from each of the unions represented. We've consulted with some students and things, and our goal really is to improve opportunities for people with disabilities and involve them in identifying, removing, preventing barriers for full participation. As I said, we began meeting in January of last year. We have a terms of reference that asks that requires that we meet 6 times a year. This year we anticipate 8 meetings plus a number of additional subcommittee meetings, which I'll speak a little bit more about. But our plan identified the 4 service priority areas that you see on the screen. So we did a survey last year, talked with lots of folks at schools and got some information through like a written survey, and identified employment and service delivery practices, the built environment, inclusion, mental health and peer connections, and information and communication as our 4 areas that we are looking at this year. And so really our goal is, you know, we want to assist the organization on preventing and removing barriers. We want to monitor this 4 priority areas in this plan, and we want to be a resource to our school district community in terms of the feedback and plans and next steps that are taken. So looking at this, we really, to enhance our work around these priorities, the committee really wanted to seek information from people with lived experience or people that are doing work directly related to those 4 priority areas this year. So we had quite a few guest speakers at our committee in addition to the regular members of it. We had Kirsten Funky Robinson, the other director of instruction for inclusive education, came. She's very connected to the mental health and social emotional wellness work being done across the system. So she came and helped us think about that a little bit. Shauna DeBott, who's with us this evening and is will be popping on screen after the presentation, executive assistant in our communications department. She really shepherded the updates to our website and the reporting mechanism that's there. And so she's been looking at that with us, came to one of our meetings to share some of that work. We had a wonderful presentation from a group of grade 4 students at Departure Bay Elementary who were looking at the accessibility challenges in their school building. Sandy Morris, who is our teacher of the deaf and hard of hearing, came and presented on ways to support people with deaf and hard of hearing needs across the system. And then in our most recent meeting, we had Linda Murdoch, who's the teacher of students with visual impairments, came, and she had a student from Rock City School as well as a presentation from a Dover student related to ways we can make our buildings more accessible for people with vision needs. So all of that culminated in a really kind of honing of our focus for the year. So this year, we really focused in a couple of key areas to get things up and running. I have mentioned that we did some work with the school district website. One area we really have been focusing on and will continue to focus on is the built environment. So we have a subcommittee that additionally included a facilities planner. We have a carpenter who is our CUPE member of the committee, and then the facilities manager, Brian Hackwood, who is also with us this evening, are on the main committee. So we've had a number of meetings where we collected some checklist information from schools. We analyzed a gap analysis that we brought in last year. I know Trustee Brozovic was with us at one of those subcommittee meetings. Based on all of that feedback, we're working towards a set of baseline expectations for accessibility. So what is the minimum level that we would like to bring all of our sites up to, knowing that it's not possible to do all that kind of overnight. We're trying to develop a bit of a plan for, you know, where do we want to bring everywhere up to, and how are we going to manage the individual requests that come in the meantime, because it is going to take us some time to work towards that plan. So that's one really big area of focus for us right now. It's going to be really complex. You know, some of our buildings are old, and it takes different mechanisms to retrofit something than it does when you're considering new builds. So we're trying to figure out how we're going to balance those pieces. And we always know there will be case by case situations that need to be examined. But built environment is definitely a significant area of focus for us. And we expect in the coming year to have quite a bit more detail added to those intentions. Really, this was a fact-finding year where we tried to just understand what the questions were so we could set about answering them in the future. Inclusion, mental health, and peer connections was a second subcommittee that we have. I know that the chart that's on the screen is something nobody can read the print on. That's okay. Really, it was just an image to let you know kind of the direction we're going in. So the subcommittee, in addition to members of the main accessibility committee, we did have an inclusion support worker from the inclusion outreach team join us, and the teacher from the committee, a classroom teacher, as well as the occupational therapist who's partnering with the CDC with us, was there. So we had a bunch of us kind of put our heads together around what is a tool we could provide for classroom teachers that helps them see the base level of accessibility similarly to the built environment, but at the classroom level. What are some universal accessibility measures that every classroom teacher can implement that allow the most access for the most kids right out of the gate in the classroom setting? And we've looked at environments in the building, like, you know, is it different in the gym and the library from the classroom? How are we going to manage stairwells? What about outside time? What about emergency planning? We've tried to divide it into, so what are the universal things for all children, but also if you have a child with a hearing need or a vision need in your class, how might you provide additional support for them? If you have a child with really profound sensory needs or high anxiety in your classroom, how might you provide for them? But not in an individual way, which we will also be doing, but more of what is a way of being that you can have in your classroom setting that provides the most access for kids in a really seamless way. So the draft matrix is ready. We really want to be thoughtful about how we share it and how we involve our classroom teaching colleagues in that conversation. So this is, again, something where the draft is ready to go. We'll be connecting it to broader work and rolling it out more directly next year. And then communications, we continue to refine our processes as well. So there is a tab that allows the public or staff to report accessibility concerns. The website functionality does have text to speech now, and there are some translation functions, so it's a little bit more accessible for folks. We did link the All Kids Go to School page, which is a place where we have information for incoming kindergarten students with diverse abilities and disabilities. We've linked that to the accessibility information, so families can find it. And the communications department is continuing to gather information related to formats and language styles that are more accessible for folks. And our hope is over the next year, we'll have some more formalized communication guidelines in the for staff and others who are communicating with the public and others to make sure that we're really being as focused and concise as we can be. So next year, we're going to have more dialogue with specialist staff and school leaders to take a look at staffing levels. That's the fourth priority area that we did not engage with a ton this year. We had to kind of start somewhere. So that's definitely on our radar still. The built environment checklist that the school teams just submitted back to us, we had identified some priority areas. We didn't know how widespread the concern or need was across the system. So we have a couple of schools left to report in on that, but that will help us with the work plan that's yet to be developed. As I said, the classroom accessibility matrix will be shared, and we'll have continued conversation with the communications department to refine those pieces. So I'm feeling really proud of the work that we've done this year, but it's definitely toe dipping into a great big body of work that's going to continue to unfold over time. You know, one of the pieces that we committed to in our plan was to update the board a couple of times a year. This year, it kind of looked like telling you we were getting started in the fall and doing a more fulsome update now. Next year, our intention would be a fairly fulsome update mid-year and then another presentation towards the end of the year, kind of summing up our progress to that point. So this time, I think I'll invite my other fellow committee members on screen to say hello, and we can answer any questions or, you know, follow up with any of the trustees that have things they'd like to ask. While we're waiting to see, I just want to thank the committee too. It has been a lot of work, and it's been a group that's not hard to get together. Every time we send an invite out, lots of people come because it's conversation that folks are really engaged with, and it's nice to be part of such a dynamic group that's so committed to moving things along.
Thank you very much for that presentation. I'm looking in the chat, waiting for folks to ask their question. Accessibility is really inclusion, right? That's the mechanism with which we include folks to be able to come to our schools, work and study and learn, and have the opportunity to thrive within our schools and our school environment. So it's a huge body of work. Yeah, I'm so glad the legislation went through. I'm glad that it's now at the forefront of what's been happening. And thank you for your hard work. I'm going to now go to Tanya.
Thank you. In reality, I could probably come up with a million questions, but the first one I guess I'll ask is, from an advocacy perspective, is there anything in specific that we could be doing around advocacy to support this work? And I'm thinking particularly around the facility upgrades and things that, I mean, we have so many other things that we have to do in terms of our AFG that I worry that some of this stuff will it can't get all get done quickly enough. The stuff that you and I were talking about, you and I and Brian, when we were working at that gap analysis.
Yeah, you know, it's interesting that you asked that, because at our last accessibility committee, one of the committee members said, how do we let the trustees know what we need? And I said, oh, well, our night is coming. I know they're going to ask. So it's great that that's the first question. So a couple of pieces. One is just they were hoping we could kind of plant the seed that we need to keep collaborating around this stuff, that I think ongoing conversation is really important. And if you get opportunities in, you know, places that trustees are at the table provincially, the idea that accessibility matters and it's expensive and anything that can be done to fund things would be great. It's, you know, playgrounds come up all the time, and like a piece of playground equipment is, you know, $40,000. And if you add ground cover to it, Brian can speak to it much better than me, but it's twice the price of the equipment to get proper ground cover underneath it. And like, we just can't do that. And if our PACs are fundraising, it'll take them a really long time to be able to meet that need. But we want to have minimum standards for playgrounds the same way we do for the built environment, because we need our kids to have access to stuff. So, so that's one piece. And just keep the conversation alive. It's really important.
Okay.
I don't know if other people on the committee have other things. I know a few of us were in that last conversation, but.
Just to build on that, you know, the the big projects, ND, you know, there's the funding threshold is so high. Keep advocating for those big projects where we won't fix the accessibility projects on a piecemeal basis.
Yeah. Yeah.
But you,
Okay.
but you know that.
I do.
And I appreciate all the effort that's gone in.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
Follow-up question, Tanya.
Not at the moment, I don't think.
I can speak a little bit to the BCSTA AGM. We did have a motion that was approved regarding funding for accessibility committees and attitudinal barriers. There was another motion that was supposed to come forward regarding capital plans within accessibility committee strat plans. That didn't exactly come forward as I think some of us had hoped it would. It was more geared towards playgrounds, more to create, to actually change current playgrounds to accessible playgrounds, to fund that. Hopefully next year there will be a motion that comes forward that just says we need capital funding for accessibility, full stop. That would have been my wish, and it's something that I bring forward on a daily basis. We can't be legislated for an accessibility committee without the funding to come behind it. So that's something that we really need to advocate hard on, and we will be doing that for sure. I mean, I can't speak only on myself, on behalf of myself, but that's kind of a board decision. But I think that's something that we can perhaps discuss as a board as well, of maybe even sending a letter to the ministry, you know, get the word out there and just keep hammering it home. I'm wondering, my question, I have a lot of questions, but technical question is, are we going to get a copy of these slides that you shared with us today?
Certainly, I could. Yeah, they've been summarized into the one pager that was attached to the package tonight, and that one pager will also be added to the website as an update for the public as well.
Great.
We just wanted to share it here before we put it up online.
Yeah, I was trying to write really fast to fill in the blanks there, but
yeah, no,
happy on that one.
Happy to share them. Yeah.
Fantastic, thank you. Also wondering, because I don't see any questions just yet here, so I'm going to kill some time with my questions. Where is the feedback tool on the website itself?
Yeah, so Shauna, I don't know if you want to speak to that one at all, or if you want me to screen share for a moment.
You can, Carrie, if you want. It's right on the home page, so it's quite easily accessible.
Okay.
Yeah, and
just
I actually,
for those folks at home who've not heard about it, maybe didn't even notice it was on the website. So like pointing it out is sort of like, there we go,
well,
here it is.
We did check this evening. We've had 20 responses since the beginning of the school year. The vast majority of those were people who were just sharing information, but anybody who left an email received an email response. Anybody who left a phone number received a phone response. It's been good information. Like it did feedback, because particularly the Built Environment Committee and the one working on those classroom, the matrix, because there are things people are asking that are about, you know, barriers their own children are experiencing in the schools, or things that staff have noticed are barriers for kids. So yeah, I like the more that gets used, the better for sure. And we're still refining our feedback loop. Right now, we're needing to manually go in and check and make sure nobody's responded, but we are, you know, there's been some work done to try to get it automatically routed to somebody's inbox so that we can do that in a super timely way.
Actually, Carrie, that's been fixed. It is
great.
Routed now. Yeah.
Great.
Do you want me to quickly share, or were you gonna?
Oh, has it come up? I thought I was.
Okay, I can see it on my screen. I can see the homepage on
yeah, so it's just over here on the right, and if you click accessibility, it comes up and it's our plan is there, and here's the feedback. So if folks were to click right on the share your feedback, this is the form that was created, and then people can put pictures if they want, or they just put in information and hit submit. Leaving your name or email is optional, but it's there. And then our references and resources that we've been using are there. And at the end of the accessibility plan, there's some feedback about some specific types of disability and the functional limitations that might result if we're not attending to options to support folks. And so that's all, like, these are just sections that people can click on to get a little bit more information.
Yes, that is really good information. Thank you. I'm also just highlighting the reporting tool because it's part of the legislation for folks at home who might not know. That was part of the mandate for an accessibility committee, and having folks with lived experience or folks who have supported those with lived experience. Leanna says, this is so good. Thank you for showing us, Carrie. Fantastic. I'm still waiting for your questions, folks. Great. I'm waiting. I'm going to ask my question. No, I've got one more. I've got a couple more. Tanya has one. Great. Okay. I think though Tanya's was actually from before, but if you want to ask another question.
Yeah, I actually have another one that popped in my head. Is there, I think the reason I was reluctant to bring this one up is because I don't want to step on any other committee's toes, but are we seeing anything that needs to be further work done in any policy areas around our around accessibility, these kind of issues? And is that JEDI or would that be are you seeing that? Would you see? I'm looking actually at Sean in this case. See that just falling under JEDI would be something separate as well.
Yeah, thanks for your question, and through you, Chair. I think a JEDI policy is a good starting point, and I think the other side of that is just in reviewing all of our policies as we do periodically, ensuring that we're looking through this lens, and consulting with people who have experience and knowledge in this area to make sure things that our policies are accessible and that the issues they seek to address are accessible to people, so that, some of our policies have processes in them, especially in my world, and I need to ensure we're looking and making sure that those processes are accessible. So yeah, I think some specific policy work through JEDI, and then just the bigger picture, ensuring we capture every policy under this net.
And I'm going to cheat then and have a follow-up since I didn't take one before, and I don't know if this is a proper fair follow-up. One of the things that came up at AGM, and it didn't go as far as we wanted. It was a bylaw change to include the term anti-ableist, and it got shot down for reasons I'm not going to get into right now because it's not relevant. But it brought up some interesting conversations for various trustees over the weekend around the issue of people don't necessarily understand what ableism is, and some anti-ableist training. And have we pursued anything like that in the district? Is that on your guys' radar?
So the notion of training is definitely on the radar. That's one of our priority areas, is around communication and making sure people have good information and understand, what to do with it. The concept of ableism or anti-ableist language, like that, has not been specifically individually addressed, but not because we left it out. It's because we haven't had any conversation about the specific content of the training yet. That's part of what we're looking to for next year. There's a very where the debate's been at so far actually is just trying to figure out the right approach, because sometimes when you do really broad training and people don't have a connection, a personal connection to it, the information doesn't land the same way. It kind of washes past them because they're busy thinking about the multitude of other responsibilities and responses they need for things. But if you wait and do kind of timely in the moment, well, then you might be talking about one type of disability related to somebody that they're interacting with, and it doesn't help provide them the breadth of understanding or the JEDI stance that sits underneath all of this work, right? So there's a huge commitment to figuring out how to get this information out and to do some training, but that is something that we expect to spend some time developing next year, and for sure we want to be really collaborative in our way forward there and really be thoughtful in our approach.
And last comment, then I'll stop talking, is there's also the issue of sensitivity. I'm going to admit that I had an issue where a person in a wheelchair, got called ableist. And it hit me it was like a punch in the face. And I got really defensive. Like, I'm not ableist. How can I be ableist? And a person I know, one was Chantel, but one was also someone else. We went through the situation and they explained to me why that person called me ableist, and I went, oh, they were right. I have taken on certain attitudes that I didn't know I'd taken on. So it's a sensitive issue and needs to be approached in a really careful way. So yeah. Okay, so that's me. I'm going to stop talking now. Let somebody else jump in.
Tanya, I really appreciate your questions though, and I appreciate the staff for answering and being open to answer these questions. It's a marginalized group that we have not, as a system, spoken about in this way for a very long time, and or ever really. This is more like a focused laser on this, and I really, really, really appreciate your passion, all of you, your dedication, and your commitment to this. Tanya, I can be ableist as well. You know, and everyone is at a different place in their journey understanding all of this. So there's some people who are just starting out and some people who are on the other side of the spectrum. And I really appreciate you being so honest and vulnerable about it, because it's okay for us to admit, you know, yeah, we've done this. This is and we learn from it though, and that's how we grow as humans. This is always learning, always growing, and I'm really thankful that we are doing this work. I'm glad that you started way sooner. I will give ourselves a pat on the back for doing it way sooner than the last minute that some have had to do, unfortunately, in other areas of this world. I have a question in regards actually to the number 3, the priority number 3, inclusion, mental health, and peer connections. Now I realize this is a huge chunk of work that you've taken on. And so you probably won't be able to answer this question or even like give me any kind of like, but it's okay. I'm just wondering if you do have anything about it. It's the mental health and peer connections part. I'm kind of curious about that. If you could speak further, just sort of like what maybe sort of direction you might be thinking about going in or anything like that. If you can speak to it, that would be great. Any one of you folks.
Well, I think it's really important if we do that work that it's embedded throughout our, you know, it's not kind of a lesson that we do in a classroom. It's actually a way of being with people so they feel really comfortable and connected. And it's, you know, all of the work we're doing around a sense of belonging, around the universal matrix in classrooms so that they are welcoming, safe spaces for all of the kids who enter the door. Like all of that is really important to us. So really this year we were taking stock of existing structures and our intentions around some of the resources we're using. That's why Kirsten Funky Robinson was invited, because she's so connected to the body of work being done in the system. And moving forward, we just need to make sure that the lens stays on this population of kids and families in our system. That you're absolutely right. They are often marginalized, or at least not as visible when some of these decisions get made, and we just need to keep that front of mind as we move forward. So there will be ongoing consultation with the inclusion outreach team, with, you know, we have the new ICY team, we have our school counselors and our new district principal of wellness that we're, you know, mental health and wellness that we're looking at, and all those pieces are carefully being constructed together. But I think speaking about specific initiatives will be into next year when we can define some of those a little bit more fulsomely for you.
Yeah, it is. It's a big body of work. I keep
is.
saying that, but that's it. I'm on the inclusion accessibility working group for BCSTA, and it's a big body of work. Just in that sphere of things. That's not even talking about the like all of it. Thank you very much. You know, you mentioned something about classroom lessons. I do think sometimes classroom lessons can help as well, like to include the children, to include our students within that work as well. But I'm sure that's something that's on the road, on the path, the journey that you'll be taking in regards to this. We'll all be taking actually in regards to accessibility within our district. Thank you all for taking time out of your day every day, I'm sure, to look into this, to discuss this, to come together and collaborate on making it better for our staff and our students. This is incredibly important work. I know it touches me personally, but it's also professionally as well. And I really appreciate this. Thank you very much for your presentation today. Thank you. Heitsepka to all of you.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night. And now we come to, not quite sure which number it is. It is 8.3, Mark Walsh, Secretary Treasurer, and Tanya Sutton, Associate Secretary Treasurer, on the proposed preliminary annual budget presentation. Thank you, Mark.
Good evening, Chair, and good evening, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to come present this evening. As usual, I'd want to really take a moment to thank Ms. Sutton for her work that she's been doing. We'll be coming back to the board at a later time to seek some help with some advocacy with respect to the exertions of reporting that has been increasing in our district, but in the province. It's really impacting our folks, and they're working extremely hard, and I just want to recognize that work, and particularly from Ms. Sutton. So before I start, just needed to say that. So this evening, what we're seeing is the culmination of a variety of information that's been provided to the board over the last number of months. And what I want to do is leave lots of room for questions rather than me going through the report in any depth, because there's not a lot of new to see in this particular report. But I do want to just maybe a bit of a theme. And so for those in the public, you're not probably aware, but trustees and senior leadership get this report every morning from around the province, a variety of educational related stories. And I've been following them quite in depth recently, particularly with relate to budget, and none of them are anything less than depressing, frankly. There's a lot of inflationary pressures in districts, particularly that are not growing. There's a lot of infrastructure pressures in districts that are growing. And so you might go up by 1,000 kids, but if you're Burnaby, you still need the technology or the portables or whatever it is that you have to pay from your operating budget to provide for that. And so most districts that I've seen, and I haven't looked at all 60, but certainly the news has always been that districts across the province are in deficit situations. Our district is, as noted in the memo, I guess what I would say is enviable amongst our peers, but there's a couple of things that I really want to highlight, both changes in the way we're doing business, and frankly, a couple of risks that I want the board to be aware of when we're contemplating future years particularly. So I have highlighted in the report, but I think it's useful to understand. So we have budgeted from an optimistic lens for both enrollment, secondary and elementary, as well as our, and I'll just use the word because that's the way it's funded, the special needs allocations and what our numbers are going to look like. We've also been more optimistic with our international student program, who have been able to kind of meet they've exceeded the last number of years. And so rather than being conservative in those estimates, we've been relatively robust. This is for a couple of reasons. One is because it allows for continuity of staffing in our schools. So if we had to, we budgeted for 10 and there's going to be 12 kids at the end of the day, or just as an example, then we'd rather have that staffing either stay or be issued now rather than us have to kind of mix and match in September. So schools are in a much better, I would argue, and there's been some feedback on that from what we are looking at. So kind of staffing to a much more realistic but potentially optimistic level at our schools. And so to be aware. It also means, and we've heard this from our feedback, is keeping more EAs in positions, and so that's exactly what we've done. What we won't see this year very likely is a large influx, though, like we have in previous years. So layoffs and there'll still be some layoffs now, just the nature of the changing of where students are, but layoffs in spring, hiring in September, and these big fluctuations, it will not be a big fluctuation with respect to that this year. So some positives there. Another thing, though, and notably when I'm reading some of the other districts, we, again, as we did last year, did not include a local capital transfer. And that is simply unrealistic if we weren't looking at a potential surplus to be able to expend. And so we don't quite have those numbers yet. We are very worried at this point about really sectoral-wide absenteeism issues, as well as sectoral-wide benefits. People using their benefits, not a bad thing. It's just the cost of it is enormous and beyond, well, we would argue beyond what we've been funded for, beyond what was costed at bargaining. And so that's impacting districts. So that's money that, so this benefit was improved in the bargaining round and we got a certain amount of money for it and the assumptions were incorrect. So if we're wrong about enrollment at the district level, we're not going to have as much money in September. When they were bargaining and they were wrong about the assumptions about the costs of the benefit increases, that impacts us directly. But it's a little harder to I guess, do the formula every year because it's fluctuating. So really what it puts us in, and as noted, is an enviable position in the sense that we're looking at some reallocations, but no specific like program cuts to be able to support the status quo. But we aren't looking at reinvestments of any note outside of course, our ICY teams, which are just coming online and the funding's there. Outside of the pilot that we've talked about for childcare as an example to support a couple of staff positions to expand that, which ultimately will mean more hours for some of our EA staff as well. So there's positives, of course, there that are not going to be funded by the board's operating budget. Hopefully they'll be funded by the revenues that come from it. So that's a little bit of a darker situation. And frankly, if we're projecting 100 increase next year, like for the 25-26 school year, and if those numbers are 100 and the kind of funding levels are what they are today, we will be looking at potentially having to deal with a deficit budget in that year. It's pretty far out to be making that assumption right now, but I just want to be realistic. But the good news is we're doing some math today, and the last 3 years, our staff have seen the largest salary increase in, I don't know, history. I don't go back that far, but in 30, 35, 40 years, it's the largest. We're looking at 13.7% over 3 years. And if you're a teacher, as an example, going through your grids, you've probably got an increase of over 25% because you've got experience and you've gone up the grids. And so our employees, we're starting to become competitive on our QP side again because we've gone up a lot. And so there's great things from a retention perspective and a recognition of the great work that our folks are doing. And so we can't forget that our budget is going up significantly. It's just all of the increase is being eaten up by increased salaries, which is, again, great for our employees who work so hard and deserve that increase to keep up with the cost of living. We continue to have, counseling ratios that are well in excess of what would be required by the district. We continue to have elevated hours for our CYFSWs in schools, a decision the board made maybe 5 or 6 years ago that's been continued year after year. Continue to support high levels of Hulkaminam speakers. We continue to support our students with diverse learning needs in excess of what we receive in funding to do that work. So there's lots of good news within the budget that just doesn't necessarily look like new money. I'm not going to go through the report in depth, except for to show, because we've seen most of this before, but I do again want to recognize the work in the alignment. And so as the board gets kind of close to the completion of the strategic plan, we're envisioning making changes and the alignment you'll see on page 19. There's capital examples, there's some operating examples. We heard from the kids this year, or tonight, what the bathroom issues are, and so you'll see John Barsby getting a new bathroom that will hopefully address some of the issues that particular school. That's in capital, of course, not operating, but just to note. The risks also worthy of note. So of course our our capital needs. We want a new ND. We're still, at the finish line of Ladysmith Intermediate. We've got significant maintenance issues for schools our age and seismically unsafe. We are opening a school that's going to have a significant operating cost in the 25-26 budget. Our technology, if we don't end up in a surplus, we're going to be not providing maybe the level of resources we need to our schools, and then inflation. And so there's not an inflationary increase for our schools, as an example, for their supplies budgets built into this budget. Now, September rolls around, in the event that we're in a surplus, that's the time we're going to be coming to the board with looking at some of those expenditures. So I'm not going to go through the assumptions. We've done that a number of times over the last couple of months and the inputs. And so maybe I'm just going to leave room for trustee questions. And of course, we'll be coming back next week. We'll offer our unions and associations the opportunity to sit down with us to maybe dig a bit deeper to help inform their presentations for the board next week. But happy to answer any questions as need. But overall, I think we are in we are in good shape as a district, and I'm very proud to present the budget this evening.
Thank you, Mark. I see Deepak says, thank you in advance to staff for the amazing work on the ST 68 budget year after year. We are in a much better situation than most other districts. Indeed, we are. We thank you very much for that. I'm going to wait for folks to see if they would like to ask a question. I have one question. Naomi, yes.
Hey, thank you so much, Mark. And really good news to hear that we are in a good position. I was just seeing in the news that there's some struggles in some other school districts right now. You mentioned inflation and everything and those kind of costs. I just wanted to ask, you might have mentioned this and I just missed it, but with the new groups that are coming in to support mental health and all those pieces, ICE, right? So how does the funding work for that? Like, because they're not just employees of the school district, right? They're coming from different branches of, like different ministry branches, right?
Yes, yes, they are. So I don't know. I see Kirsten still on here. I don't want to surprise her, or maybe Tanya wants to jump on. So what I can say is we received a large chunk of money last year. I'll let Tanya speak to it.
Good evening through the chair, and Kirsten might want to jump in for sure. What I can say from a funding perspective is that we have been provided with an envelope to resource for youth support workers or youth and for counselors, and then some supplies and some services in order to provide fulsome support for the group. But it is an ministry initiative that touches on health and etc. So I guess I'll leave it. We have received the funding for the coming year as noted in the budget, and that includes cost inflation for each of the positions. So that's good news. But maybe if that's not enough, Kirsten, did you want to add anything?
I don't think so, other than just, reiterating that the positions that are part of the ICY teams that are our responsibility are the 4 clinical counselors as well as the 4 peer support workers. So those are the only district staff that are a part of the team. And then there are also substance use clinicians who are Island Health employees and some other team members that are part of the MCFD Child and Youth Mental Health team, a program lead who comes from Island Health as well. So that's completely separate from the funding envelope that we receive for our staff and for the supplies and so on, as Tanya mentioned.
Okay, thank you. That's kind of what I wanted a clarification on, is like sort of what our responsibility was. Okay, that sounds great. Thank you very much.
Thank you. While we're waiting for other folks to come on, see if they have any questions. I wanted to point to page 37 where you highlight Strong Start BC, and I'm not sure if folks have been following the news, but Surrey is in quite the crisis with their Strong Start. And I'm happy that we are continuing ours as it is, but it looks like we're going to be dipping a little bit into our operating. Is that correct? Would you be able to clarify, Mark, please?
Yeah, so in previous years, we had a little bit of a surplus to draw down to do that, but the costs have gone up and the revenues have not gone with them where they need to be. And so we are looking this year of contribution from our operating. This is an item that we will bring to the board next year, particularly if we are looking at potentially having issues associated with our funding levels. I know that some districts are cutting back their levels, not the program itself, but their levels of service. I believe I saw Maple Ridge. I believe I saw Coquitlam. I'm not completely sure. And so this is something we would bring before the board, but you'll see on page 37, we note that 26,000 from operating is being used to subsidize Strong Start in this budget.
Right, and personally, as a trustee, I believe it's extremely integral to early childhood education. Strong Start is such an important aspect of the early years for families, really connecting with their communities and things like that. And I really think it's quite, it's to me a very, very important aspect of what we do as a district. And I know that I hope us as a board can advocate for more funding. I know that Surrey is going pretty hard with it. They do have to cut quite significantly their Strong Start, and as you can see, it's kind of encroaching into our operation budget as well. And I know other districts as well are having issues, so the advocacy is going to come pretty hard, I think, from all areas. So thank you for keeping that as it is, and I'm looking forward to discussion in the future as well, and hopefully we can get some good change within the ministry for funding for that, because it's so important. It's like the ICY teams, right? We got the Strong Start, and then we have the ICY teams in the later years. Great. So does anybody else have any questions?
And perhaps I can just respond to that just for 1 second, if that's okay.
Absolutely.
I know there's going to be advocacy coming. Sorry, Tanya popped on maybe to say to add something too from an informational perspective. Before I comment, maybe I could ask Tanya if she'd like to comment.
Thank you. I did just want to let the board know that the budget document that goes to the ministry provides a mechanism for us to highlight this shortfall. And that's somewhat new. And so they are aware. And I believe that recent events are going to make that more visually out there, but we would definitely highlighting that. So hopefully they will increase the amount per school, because that's, I mean, cost of wage increases hasn't been accounted for. So that's the shortfall that we're dealing with.
And the only thing I would add, and it's not necessarily directly linked to the Strong Start, but to the advocacy generally, if the board is contemplating advocacy, is there may be a wish for a broader advocacy. And so what I mean by that is we've got all of these different funds that we're getting thrown at. We have to report. So I talked about, you know, how we only have one Tanya with so many hands, and all the reporting that has to go with those various sums. So if School District 68 was in a deficit and it was subsidizing Strong Start, and it was subsidizing what Community Link was for, and it was subsidizing this and it was subsidizing that, ultimately the Board of Education is the responsive mechanism at the local level. And so I just don't want to lose sight of, it would be better for the government just to give us additional funding in a pot that's the discretionary to the district, rather than another pot that's targeted towards a specific item. Not that Strong Start's not important, but you know, Feeding Futures, if they don't keep up on inflation there, we're going to start running behind. And so just something to contemplate when it's time for advocacy with respect to asking for additional supports, is that flexibility at the district level.
Okay, interesting. It's an interesting perspective. I hadn't thought of it that way. And I mean, the reporting part as well. That is also another thing that you highlighted at the beginning, and I really appreciate you saying that, because it is reporting for every single pot of funds that we receive. Is that correct, Mark? Am I
Largely, yes. Yep.
Yeah. So new funds, new reporting.
In addition to reporting, like we have to report, so we're reporting on whether we've been impacted by forest fires and whether we've been impacted, what our COVID impact continues to be like. We still have all of this additional reporting. Some of it's less onerous because it might not impact us so much, but it's been increasing, and the more pots there are, the more time we spend of human resources or financial resources to report.
Right. It's sort of a loop, right? It's you want to have more reporting, but then you got to hire more people, and then it costs more money, and then you're sort of going around in a circle. And yeah, that's tough. Leanna, you have a question.
I think Tanya had a question first, or
was that not the question before?
No, that was just a couple minutes ago.
Oh,
no,
okay.
I added one now.
My apologies, Leanna.
No worries.
Yes.
And it's sort of been hit. It's sort of been addressed. It was around advocacy and a time. I guess my question really would be, what would be a good timeline for advocacy, for some advocacy work, right? What the same time we submit we finalize our budget?
So through you, Chair, I would say that there's the politicians get to decide the best time for advocacy. What I would suggest, though, is that whatever advocacy, if it was intent to change next year's budget, is got to be done in early fall. If you don't have it, if it's not done by then, you're getting past the time that you can have a legitimate impact on a March funding announcement.
Thank you for understanding what I was really getting at, Mark. That was exactly what I was trying to figure out. All right, so I will be probably bringing something background that I'll work on a wording. Thanks.
Sounds great. And it's always the sooner the better, right? Leanna, thank you for your patience, all of you.
Okay, so I had two. I love the, I'm going to go with acronym and see if anyone can keep up, because this is a fun one. ASSAI, the after school sports and arts one. So it was just kind of surprising to see that it had gone from 218 in 2021-22, and then 98,000 the next year, and then back up to 147. Is that just like, it is the special purpose fund, so those work differently than like usual money that comes in, doesn't it? Like,
yeah, and so Tanya's right here. I'm assuming it's got to do with carryover associated with COVID, but I will turn it over to Ms. Sutton.
Actually, and I noticed Ms. Poulins jumped on as well, and I think we'll both have the same response in that the program, the way the program was and now is funded has changed. It used to be rather cumbersome in that they had a kind of a multi-year schedule, and we would receive the funding in advance of the year that the programming was going to be provided. So we would have to account for it early, and then it would roll into what we call our deferred revenue. So it wouldn't necessarily be highlighted as annual revenue. It was sort of not hidden, but masked behind a concurrent ongoing revenue that was received in advance. So even in putting that together, a great question, and in putting that together, I thought that might be something that was highlighted, but it's not any impact of the program. The program has been ongoing and beautifully continuous without issue. And I mean, Jackie may wish to jump in, but it's just an accounting issue.
Okay.
And I would say it's both what you and Mark commented on, so that one for sure. And we definitely did have carryover when we couldn't offer as much programming during COVID, but they allowed us to carry the funds forward to when we could. So we are now down to just an annual amount that we have.
Okay, thanks. I have one more question, if that's okay. It's separate though. It's about in that same category of the special purpose. It's the Youth Resiliency Grant. I think that's what it's called. So was that just like for the, like, that was just a pilot project last year, then the to be determined for the following year. Like, yeah, I just don't really fully understand that or what it does and if it's ongoing.
Tanya, are you the best person, or we bring Kristen? Oh.
Kristen might want to jump on. What I would say is that this is a, I believe it's a 3-year commitment. The complexity with it is that the subsequent year funding, so we received this year's funding and then now we're rolling into year 2, doesn't align with our year end. And so that poses one problem. And the second layer is that the second year funding was contingent on how the program went in year 1. So there was some reporting that was required, and all is submitted and well at this point, and the funding and the staffing will all be in place. Unfortunately, it's just a timing scenario with regards to the annual budget being compiled in advance of these things happening. So literally, as soon as it will be added all back in, the staffing is not being adversely affected, and the funding is now confirmed from the city as carrying on as originally planned.
Thanks.
You brought up a good question. What does the Youth Resilience Grant do? And I know I feel like we spoke about this in the past, but if somebody could remind me really quickly what this was for. I'm so sorry. I should have this in my brain, but it's not.
Through the chair, I'm happy to speak to that. My apologies, I'm having all sorts of camera fun tonight. I wasn't expecting to be using it, but here we are, that's okay. So the Youth Resiliency Strategy, as Tanya mentioned, so the reason that isn't aligned with our typical process is that the funding comes, some federal funding that has come to the city of Nanaimo, and through a grant application process, we received a grant to offer opportunities for youth identified as having a number of risk factors to be able to connect with healthy adult mentors in recreational opportunities outside of school time. And so that involves, we have 2 child youth family support workers who are attached to that strategy. And most of those opportunities are running out of Woodlands at this point in time. We have partnership with the Nanaimo Boxing Club, with a DJ, with we have some former graduates from Woodlands who are serving as mentors for music recording and some of those different pieces. Yeah, it's really
That
cool.
I know about. Yes, it's
Yeah.
really cool.
It
It
is.
is. It's really cool. You know what? We need a presentation on that coming up there.
Sounds good.
Yeah, that would be
sounds good.
great. Awesome. Good deal. Great question, and thank you so much, you all, for answering our questions on this. Yeah, it does feel good to have a budget that isn't a deficit, and we're cutting things. I appreciate that, and I appreciate the very thoughtful process that you all took to make this budget what it is. Is there anybody else who would like to ask a question? Thank you very, very, very much for this budget presentation. Super appreciate it. And I know it's going to kind of come back a little bit again and again, and then we're going to vote on it. Thank you for all your hard work on it. It's a hard and complex thing, and it's the backbone of what we do here. So appreciating all that that you have all put into it. And I am going to see now where we are on our agenda. We have 8.3, so we did that, and now we are going to 9, correspondence referred from the regular board meeting. I don't believe we have any. And no unfinished business, no new business, and question period. Do we have any questions? No questions. Thank you, Karen. Okay, so can I get a motion to adjourn this meeting? You can just pop on if you'd like, trustees. Great, thank you, Leanna. Leanna and Greg seconds. Sorry, Tanya, you were too slow. Thank you very much, everyone. Is there anybody opposed to adjourning this meeting today? Please speak now or forever hold your peace. Okay. Thank you. That is approved. Meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everyone, for attending, for coming to this evening. And I hope you have a very nice evening. It looks like the sun is out and we're going to have a really nice sunset tonight. So hopefully you all can catch that. Thank you, everyone.